Israel is one of the most politically complex countries in the world, and its citizens face many travel restrictions due to geopolitical conflicts, especially with countries in the Middle East and beyond. As a result of long-standing conflicts and political tensions, particularly around the Israeli-Palestinian issue, several countries have imposed bans or restrictions on Israeli citizens entering their borders. These restrictions are often a reflection of political statements against Israel's policies, though they can vary in enforcement and duration. In this video, we're going to explore the 10 countries where Israeli citizens completely banned to enter. Number 1. Iran. Iran is one of the most well-known countries that bans Israeli citizens from entering. The ban is strict, and there are no exceptions for Israelis seeking to visit Iran for tourism, business, or other purposes. The relationship between Israel and Iran has been strained for decades, particularly since the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. After the revolution, the newly established Islamic Republic adopted a vehemently anti-Israel stance, which has remained to this day. Iran's leadership opposes the very existence of Israel and often refers to the country as the Zionist regime. This ideological opposition stems from Iran's support for the Palestinian cause and its broader efforts to assert leadership within the Islamic world. Iran continues to isolate itself from Israel through both rhetoric and policy. The ban is enforced at all entry points into the country, and Israeli citizens attempting to enter Iran would face arrest and possible espionage charges. Additionally, any foreign visitors with Israeli stamps in their passports could be subject to scrutiny or denied entry. The travel ban makes it impossible for Israeli citizens to explore Iran's rich history, culture, and religious sites. It also hampers any potential business opportunities, especially given Iran's strategic position in the Middle East. The absence of Israeli tourists and businesses in Iran means both countries miss out on potential economic opportunities. However, for Iran, maintaining this ban is a crucial element of its foreign policy, rooted in its broader ideological stance against Israel. There are no documented exceptions to this rule. Even dual citizens or those with family ties are subject to the ban, highlighting the rigidity of Iran's position. Number 2. Syria. Syria is another country that imposes a complete travel ban on Israeli citizens. The two countries have a long history of conflict, particularly over territorial disputes. The relationship between Israel and Syria has been marked by military conflict, territorial disputes, and political enmity. The Golan Heights, which Israel captured from Syria during the Six-Day War in 1967, remains a major point of contention. Syria and Israel are technically still in a state of war, and this has led to one of the strictest travel bans for Israeli citizens. Syrians are also forbidden from entering Israel, and any attempts at travel between the two countries are treated with extreme suspicion. For Israeli citizens, this means missing out on some of the world's most iconic historical sites, like the ancient city of Palmyra and the beautiful Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. It's a real shame that these cultural exchanges are blocked because of political differences. And for Israelis with Syrian roots, this ban is particularly painful. Many people who have family origins in Syria are unable to visit their ancestral homeland, further deepening the divide between the two peoples. The travel ban is a symbol of the larger conflict between Syria and Israel. It perpetuates the isolation of Israeli citizens in the region and limits any potential for cultural or economic exchanges. Number 3. Lebanon. Lebanon is another country with a strict ban on Israeli citizens. The ban reflects the complex and often violent history between the two nations, which have been in conflict for decades. Lebanon and Israel's conflict stems from various factors, including Israel's military involvement in Lebanon during the 1980s and the presence of Hezbollah, a powerful Lebanese militant group that is fiercely anti-Israel. Over the years, Israel has conducted military operations in Lebanon, which have only worsened relations between the two countries. Lebanon does not recognize Israel as a state and strictly enforces a ban on Israeli citizens. Any Israeli citizens found to have visited Lebanon can also face severe penalties. The Lebanese-Israeli border remains a heavily militarized and tense zone, with occasional clashes between Hezbollah and Israeli forces. For Israeli citizens, Lebanon is completely off-limits. The ban not only restricts tourism, but also limits any potential business ventures or diplomatic engagement. Even individuals with Israeli stamps in their passports can be denied entry into Lebanon. For Israeli travelers, this ban means they're unable to visit Lebanon's stunning Mediterranean coastline, the bustling city of Beirut, or the ancient ruins of Baalbek. It also cuts off business ties and prevents any sort of formal diplomatic engagement between the two countries. The situation is complicated further by Hezbollah's strong anti-Israel stance. The group views Israel as its main enemy, and that's a huge factor in why this travel ban exists. Number 4. Iraq. Iraq has long been a vocal critic of Israel, and it participated in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, alongside other Arab nations. The two countries have never had diplomatic relations, and Iraq continues to support the Palestinian cause. Under Saddam Hussein, Iraq's hostility towards Israel was well known. Even after his fall, the country's stance has remained largely the same. As it stands, Israeli citizens are not allowed to enter Iraq for any reason, whether for tourism, business, or diplomatic purposes. Even travelers with Israeli stamps in their passports could face difficulties entering Iraq, as the country maintains strict policies against any ties to Israel. For Israeli citizens, this ban represents more than just a travel restriction. Many Israelis have Iraqi roots, as there was once a vibrant Jewish community in Iraq. In the mid-20th century, thousands of Iraqi Jews were forced to flee their homeland due to rising anti-Semitism and political persecution. For Israeli citizens of Iraqi descent, the inability to visit Iraq prevents them from reconnecting with their heritage and visiting their ancestral homes. The ban also limits opportunities for potential diplomatic or business engagements between Israel and Iraq. Number 5. Yemen. Yemen has a travel ban in place for Israeli citizens, largely due to its historical and religious opposition to Israel. The ongoing civil war in Yemen has only deepened the divide between the two nations. Yemen has been a part of the Arab-Israeli conflict since Israel's establishment in 1948. The country has always sided with the Arab nations that oppose Israel's right to exist, and this has resulted in a complete ban on Israeli citizens entering Yemen. Yemen is currently embroiled in a brutal civil war that has devastated the country. The conflict, which involves various factions, including the Houthi rebels and the internationally recognized government, has made it nearly impossible for any diplomatic progress to be made. The Houthi rebels, who control significant parts of Yemen, are particularly hostile toward Israel, further cementing the travel ban. Yemen's ban on Israeli citizens is also tied to broader regional politics. Yemen is part of the Arab League, a coalition of Arab countries that, until recently, largely opposed Israel's existence. Due to the ongoing conflict and the ban, Israeli citizens are unable to visit Yemen's historical and cultural landmarks, such as the ancient city of Sana'a or the Socotra archipelago. The war-torn country is largely off-limits to tourists, but for Israeli citizens, the ban makes it doubly impossible. Currently, there are no known exceptions for Israeli citizens trying to enter Yemen. Even dual citizens with Israeli passports are likely to be denied entry or face serious consequences if they attempt to visit. Number 6. Kuwait. Kuwait is one of the Arab Gulf states that maintains a ban on Israeli citizens. This ban reflects Kuwait's support for the Palestinian cause and its broader opposition to Israel's policies in the region. Kuwait's relationship with Israel has always been strained, largely due to its stance on Palestinian rights. Kuwait was one of the first Arab nations to condemn Israel's creation and has remained a vocal critic of Israel's policies, particularly in relation to the Palestinian territories. Kuwait remains steadfast in its opposition to Israel, and Israeli citizens are prohibited from entering the country. Unlike some other Gulf states, such as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, which have normalized relations with Israel, Kuwait has not shown any willingness to follow suit. Israeli citizens are unable to visit Kuwait, which is known for its rich oil reserves and modern infrastructure. The ban also affects potential business and diplomatic engagements between the two countries. Public opinion in Kuwait largely supports the government's stance on Israel. Many Kuwaitis see their country's position as a principled stand in solidarity with Palestinians. This public sentiment plays a major role in reinforcing the government's hardline stance against Israel and its citizens. Number 7. Sudan. Sudan, a country with a rich history and deep-rooted traditions, has a complex relationship with Israel. One of the significant aspects of this relationship is that Israeli citizens are banned from entering Sudan. The ban on Israeli citizens entering Sudan is primarily rooted in the long-standing political and ideological tensions between the two nations. Historically, Sudan has supported the Palestinian cause and has been part of the Arab League. which collectively opposed Israeli statehood for decades. In the aftermath of the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, Sudan officially imposed a ban on Israeli citizens. This policy has been in place for decades and affects anyone holding an Israeli passport, effectively barring them from entry into the country. Even citizens of other nations who have Israeli visas stamped in their passports can face difficulties entering Sudan. This ban poses numerous challenges for Israeli citizens who wish to explore Sudan's rich cultural heritage or engage in business ventures are denied entry. In addition, this ban limits diplomatic relations and trade between the two countries. Sudan's ban on Israeli citizens also stems from religious and cultural factors. Sudan has a predominantly Muslim population, and for many years, its government aligned itself with conservative Islamic policies. In the past, Sudan's government promoted anti-Israeli sentiment as part of its broader pan-Arab and Islamic identity, which is deeply connected to the solidarity with Palestine. Number 8. Libya. The ban on Israeli citizens entering Libya has deep historical roots, going back to the creation of Israel in 1948. The Arab-Israeli conflict that followed Israel's establishment triggered strong anti-Israeli sentiment across the Arab world, including Libya. Libya's ban on Israeli citizens is also influenced by its geopolitical alliances. For decades, Libya aligned itself with anti-Israel regimes and movements across the Middle East and North Africa. Islam plays a significant role in Libyan society and politics, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is often framed in religious terms within the Arab world. Libya, as a predominantly Muslim country, has viewed the Palestinian cause not only as a political issue but also as a religious one. When Muammar Gaddafi took power in 1969 through a military coup, the situation worsened. Gaddafi's government took a radically anti-Israel stance. He viewed Israel as an imperialist outpost and a direct threat to the Arab identity and unity. Libya has been part of the Arab League, a regional organization of Arab states, which initiated an economic boycott of Israel in the 1950s. The boycott prohibited Arab states from trading with Israel or with companies that did business with Israel. Many Libyans perceive the conflict with Israel as a struggle for the dignity and survival of the Muslim community, and thus the government's ban on Israeli citizens reflects the country's religious and ideological stance on the conflict. Number 9. Malaysia. Malaysia, a Southeast Asian nation known for its rich cultural diversity and economic growth, is also notable for its strong stance on certain international political issues. One of the most significant and widely discussed policies in Malaysia's foreign relations is its ban on Israeli citizens entering the country. Malaysia does not have any diplomatic relations with Israel, and the two countries have been at odds since the creation of Israel in 1948. Malaysia has maintained a firm stance of non-recognition of Israel as a state. This policy is largely based on Malaysia's strong political and moral support for the Palestinian people. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a key issue for many Muslim-majority nations, and Malaysia, being a predominantly Muslim country, has made it a central part of its foreign policy to oppose Israel's actions in Palestine. Malaysian leaders have frequently spoken out in international forums, including the United Nations, condemning Israel's actions and calling for an independent Palestinian state. This unwavering support for Palestine is seen as a moral obligation, and it shapes the country's stance on not allowing Israeli citizens into its territory. Malaysian authorities enforce the ban strictly, preventing Israeli citizens from entering the country under any circumstances. Israeli passports are not accepted at Malaysian borders, and even travelers with dual citizenship who possess an Israeli passport may face challenges in entering Malaysia. Number 10. Pakistan. The absence of diplomatic relations between Pakistan and Israel means there are no formal communication channels between the two countries. The Palestine-Israel conflict is at the heart of why Pakistan has consistently upheld this ban. The conflict has deep religious and political implications, particularly in the Muslim world. Pakistan, being a majority Muslim country, aligns itself with the larger Islamic sentiment that opposes Israeli policies regarding Palestinians, particularly concerning issues like the occupation of Palestinian territories, the status of Jerusalem, and the treatment of Palestinian civilians. Another reason behind the ban is related to security concerns. Given the tense relations between Israel and several Muslim-majority countries, including Pakistan, allowing Israeli citizens to enter Pakistan could raise security risks. There have been fears that Israeli citizens could be targeted by extremist groups in Pakistan, and the government likely wishes to avoid any potential threats to national security. For Israeli citizens, the ban means they cannot enter Pakistan under any circumstances. Whether for tourism, business, or religious purposes, Israeli nationals are prohibited from obtaining visas to Pakistan. Even dual nationals who hold both Israeli and another country's passport may face difficulties if they have previously traveled to Israel, as Pakistani immigration authorities scrutinize entry stamps from Israel. The ban on Israeli citizens in these 10 countries is deeply rooted in complex political, religious, and historical factors. While some of these nations may eventually reconsider their positions as global dynamics shift, for now, Israeli passport holders face significant travel restrictions. These restrictions highlight the ongoing tensions between Israel and various parts of the world, particularly in the Middle East and Muslim-majority nations. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insightful content. Thanks for watching.